On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, 14 Steps to Financial...
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Shawn Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome back on Zoom, not live and in studio, but on Zoom, your financial coach, George Corbello. How you doing, George?
Hey, Shawn, how are you? Just live from, sunny Tampa on the other side of the, I couldn't get to the office today for the recording, but I appreciate us doing this virtually. So It's a little weird, but at the same time, I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be fun. We have a great guest sent to us by Book Launchers, who's sent us a couple of great guests over the years. And one of the things I like about it is, I get, as a podcast host, I get hit up all the time. We think so-and-so would be a great guest. We think so-and-so would be a great guest. And for you listeners out there, I turn down a lot of them because they'll send me somebody that has nothing to do with what we cover on the show. And so I'll say, thanks, but no thanks. I don't think this person would really be a good fit for our audience. But today's guest is completely in line with what we're talking about here on the show and the last couple that Book Launchers have sent me. So thank you for making that connection, Book Launchers. So I'm going to go into his bio here. Let me grab real quick the short one. He is a CPA in Colorado. He's got an MBA in finance. He's also got a bunch of letters after his name, FCA, FCCA. He's an international personal finance specialist, a certified public accountant, chartered accountant in Jamaica, which I think is where he is from, and a chartered certified accountant in the UK, and the creator of the online course and the book, 14 Steps to Financial Freedom. He is a territory leader, senior partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Jamaica. He believes financial intelligence leads to financial independence, and he offers training in several countries on strategies and behavioral changes required to pursue a path to financial freedom. Welcome our guest, Bruce Scott. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, George. That introduction, I'm not wondering which person are you talking about.
So, do you live in Jamaica or do you live in the States?
I live in Jamaica, but I studied various things in other countries. So that's why, and thank God for the US economy. You don't block internationals from doing your exams. And the same thing in the UK. So even though I'm living in Jamaica, I have US credentials and I have UK credentials, which is really awesome.
One of the other things I read at the beginning of the book, you talk about your story, born into poverty, but almost self-educated until you got, the academic education. One of the youngest persons ever to qualify as a chartered accountant in the Caribbean at 21 years old. One of the youngest partners in the history of PricewaterhouseCoopers Jamaica at age 32. And that goes a lot into why you created the course and created the book, which I want to ask you about. Before I get there really quick, if you want to check out the book, which I'm in the middle of reading of. I do a lot of reading, but unfortunately I couldn't get through the book in time for today's interview, but I am in the middle of reading it. You can go to 14stepstofinancialfreedom.com. That's where you can get the book. It's also available, I think, on Amazon. 14 is the number. So the number 14 and then stepstofinancialfreedom.com. I will put that in the notes as well. Facebook and LinkedIn, people can find you under Bruce Scott. But do you want to maybe start? Why don't we start with where you started in the book, which is your story and how that impacted you and how that set you on a course to financial freedom?
Yeah, so my story, my mother's mother, that would make her my grandmother, right? had 12 children, and my mother was one of the 12. And we grew up in a city community, and we lived in what we call tenement yard. A tenement yard is where you have other people living in the yard that they are not your blood relatives. So my grandmother, with her 12 children and her children's children, which included me, had about 2 rooms. And all I remember were lots of beds because you had to give priority to sleep. Right. And I remember my uncle sleeping head and tail For those who don't understand, if you want more people to hold on a bed, let somebody's head at the top and the feet for the other one. That's how you cram people on the bed. So that was my context. That was my setting. And I discovered very early that the vehicle that I was going to use to turn our financial situation around was something that's located between my two ears. That's my brain and my natural gifts and talents. My family pushed education. I did very well. And thank God, through the power of education. Somebody says education is the power of the powerless. And if anybody who is listening to George and Shawn today, and you have any doubts about the power of empowering yourselves through learning, and I'm not necessarily talking about a college degree, get good at something. Right. And make a distinction in the market, solve a problem that people value, and you are on your way to financial freedom because you need the seed of income by some means. I'm going to pause right there.
No, I love it. I love it. I think the thing that we want to do something that we are passionate about. We want to do something that we, obviously can give back to the community in some manner. So I think it's just really understanding what that is. And I think a lot of people follow other people's dreams, right? Other people's stuff to be able to get rich quick or just get out of their situation. So I guess for me, the question for you though is like, what makes your program, what you're doing, and what you're putting into different from, obviously there's so much information that's out there already. So what makes you and your program stand out for folks?
Excellent, George. So my response to that is everybody has a story. And everybody's story is unique to that person. So if we learn to tell our unique story and keep that uniqueness, then your story will stand out. And I believe I was able to do that by intertwining traditional financial concepts and stocks and bonds, but linking that to the real life story of a youth. And I'm using that word deliberately for the audience, especially to connect with me.
The Southerners.
So nobody else's journey is like my journey. So, I'm the eldest of 4 children from a mother. So I show in the book that despite your disadvantageous situation, I was able to leverage education. And that's not a new message. I had to make myself a bit vulnerable. I had to tell persons things about me that nobody else would have that experience because it's me. But at the same time, they were able to see themselves in me. And so I think that, and then the other thing that makes this book special, which I know other authors have it, is the credibility. I am not talking about concept that somebody else has done. I am talking about stuff that I've applied to my life. So for example, I have a chapter that is called Set Financial Goals and Become Obsessive about achieving them. And I have a real life story about a little ordinary car that I used to drive. And when my inner city community friends saw me driving that ordinary car, having been on national television for being the youngest Jamaican, they could not understand why I wasn't driving a BMW. And I had to explain that, look, I was focusing on buying an apartment and I was 23 years old. I was able to buy my first property. And that was the start of my financial journey. I was obsessed about achieving financial freedom. Nobody else can tell that story in that context, but people will see themselves in that. And I think if everybody learns to tell their story and highlighting the uniqueness, then potentially we could have bestsellers for everything. That's kind of a joke, but.
Well, but I like the way you present it. But at the same time, I remember when I was a young attorney, I started in Miami. At the time, I was driving a little pickup truck, a little GMC Sonoma pickup truck. And I remember I was never as popular as when I turned 21 and I could legally buy alcohol. And then when I bought a pickup truck and everybody wanted to help me move. But I remember one of the other associate attorneys at the firm said, "You're an attorney. Why are you driving a pickup truck?" I said, "Well, number one, I like it. Number two, I'm a young attorney. I got no money. I still got law school debts I got to pay. It's a nice pickup truck. I don't need the BMW, the Mercedes, the Lexus. I don't need any of that. I've got a truck that, I've got to transport. Does it get me from point A to point B? Yeah, it does. I've got what I need." So I totally relate to your story. I went through the exact same thing.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Shawn. So.
No, and again, I got to say too, if we're going to go back in our histories as well, like, again, I raised in New York City, single mom, just me and my sister itself. And we didn't have a lot. We had enough to, my mom did enough to be able to get us to school, get us to, the clothes on our back and be able to just survive in the city itself. So totally understand our starting point, right? But then the question is what makes us different in our journey?
And what you just said, George, and what Shawn just said is interesting to me, but there's a common theme, notwithstanding the underlying challenge of a single mom, notwithstanding the underlying challenges of Shawn and my challenges, we were able to overcome. And I think somebody who is just starting out or somebody who is in the middle of their pain will be able to see something in those three stories. But I don't think people have learned how to show what's so special about their story. So in my book, I also talk about people that I coach for free. That's unique. I'm a busy partner. Why on earth would you spend 4 hours on a phone with a couple who is broke? Because I know what it is like to be broke.
You're trying to put George out of business.
Part of financial
put George out of business. There you go.
Part of financial freedom is helping others to be free. To be free. And that's what the sow your money part of the book is about. The book is about growing money, protecting money, and sowing your money. And sowing your money there is not investing. I dealt with that under the grow your money. The sowing your money is now that you have excess, lift others as you were lifted. Amazing. That's different. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
No, not a lot of people talk about that. No. And that's part of the message of what we want to convey in the podcast. I mean, all of this content is free. There's some paid content if you want to jump on Patreon, but the majority of the content that George and I produce is free for that reason. We want to help support. We want to help lift people up. But I want to talk a little bit about some of what you delve into. Obviously, we're not going to go over all 14 points. If someone wants to learn all 14 points, they can contact you. They can buy the book.
Go get the book.
Buy the book. Right, buy the book. That's what I'm saying.
But one of the things you talk about in there is discover your financial personality. What do you mean by that?
Oh, Lord, Shawn, you're starting me up, man. Listen, so your money personality is your natural tendency towards money and how you treat money. Everybody has a dominant money personality. I talk about 4 money personalities in the book. Each of us will touch on one of the 4, but I believe we all have a dominant money personality. And it is really about self-awareness and being able to identify the blind spot that comes with your natural money personality. So my natural money personality is being a saver. And that means I like to hoard. And that hoarding, your money personality is shaped by your childhood experiences and how you saw others deal with money around when you were younger. So because I know the reason why I put the chapter in there about money personality is simple. You need to be aware of it. You need to understand the weaknesses of your natural money personality. I'm not asking you to change your natural money personality. I'm asking you to safeguard against the weaknesses. So as a saver, I feel vulnerable in releasing my money to a stock or a bond or an ETF. So I need to learn, which I obviously have learned, that for that money to grow, and I might feel safe having it in a savings account or in my mattress, there is the termite of inflation that will get to that money in the same way that I might invest it and lose. So I now need to learn how to invest wisely, invest for the long term. Don't panic during market downturn, which is another chapter that I have. Long answer.
No.
Passionate.
Certainly passionate answer. I will agree.
Oh, yes. Fire coming through my ears, man.
And again, I love the 4 personality types that you have provided itself. Ostrich is a good one, you know.
Yeah.
I already see the visual in regards to, it's that see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of thing itself. Yeah. So if I don't know it's a problem, we're good, and we see a lot of people who, we're in those situations today where it's more of like, well, if I don't know if I don't have a budget, I'm good. I'll just make the money and somehow all my problems will be addressed. And I think some of the things that you touched upon in your book as well is really that focus of like, we need to have some kind of plan. And I love one thing I want to ask too is the obsession. What is when we talk about being obsessed with our financial goals, obviously there could be a negative connotation to that, but what's your take in regards to being obsessed when it comes to, the journey?
I said, yo, that's a Jamaican term. You guys.
Yeah, that's a New York term. What are you talking about?
I'm sorry. It's a global term now. So George, let me quickly, I know we don't have a lot of time, but let me contextualize where that obsession emanates from. So in Growing Your Money, I argue that first you need to do your financial diagnosis. in the same way that your doctor will test your blood sugar and so on. When you go to the doctor, and let's say you have 2 small children, and that doctor tells you that your heart is not beating regularly, or your PSA is too high, or your blood sugar, because you look in the eyes of those 2 beautiful kids, even if you don't want to do the exercise to help your blood sugar to come down, you flip your mind to those 2 little angels.
Yep.
And that obsession, you can feel my passion coming through this call, right? Turns on. So there is a link. Before I get to obsession, I set it up with, what's your diagnosis? You don't have any insurance? You're weak, you're suffering, you're sick financially. You are a key member of your household. You let that drive you to secure the legacy of your family. Poverty is no fun. Poverty is cruel. Poverty is unkind. You will have a funeral that you want to go to for a family member who lives in another country, and you cannot go because you cannot pay the plane fare. That's not cool, right? So you need to get obsessed so you don't find yourself in those situations. But obsession is driven by the need to secure your family's legacy and just the basics. But many people don't realize the situation that they're in because the credit card gets closer to the gap seamlessly. So when you do the diagnosis in this book, like a couple that I was talking to yesterday, actually the husband, he said, Bruce, the Goldsons that you have in the book, a picture of how their financial health was really bad. He said, you should have changed the couple's name from the Goldsons. I will not call their surname, but let's say, he said you should have called it the Browns. They're not the Browns. and I spent like an hour and a half with him, showing him how to turn around because his obsession went up when he saw the hole that he was in. And he actually has 2 daughters, by the way.
I think we all have. I know George has 2 kids. I have 2 kids. So obviously, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. What you said totally hits home because there are a lot of things that I do, a lot of phobias that I've had to overcome just because I want to maintain that life for my wife and my boys, really.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I totally get. Again, I mean,
no, and for me, I think I'll tell you mine. For me, my thing was financial journey, get out of debt, do the things that were right itself. Because as we get older, I don't want to be the burden on my kids, and that's not a bad or a negative. It's just, I want to be able to live what we need to do between my wife and I as we grow older. And if something were to go wrong, we're in this generation now that we have, these kids who are taking care of their parents as well as taking care of their kids. And I just didn't want that. I wanted to be in a better situation. And I think, for a lot of folks, that should be part of their motivation. That was my obsession, And it's one of those kind of things. Find what's your obsession to be able to get your jump started on that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One of the things you talk about, and that's sort of where I am in the book, is the way the book is set up. You take the first couple of chapters to talk about discovering your financial personality, diagnosing your financial health, all that kind of stuff. And then I assume the end of the book is more the practical nature of here's how you can implement this strategy. Here's how you can work towards this goal, that goal. So that's where I sort of am in the book right now. But one of the other things you talk about, increased savings using the TTCI method. What's the TTCI
more
method?
Acronyms.
So, George, you asked me what makes this book different. I have some cool mnemonics to help people to remember. Because people, if you don't remember stuff, then it means nothing to you. So the context, I love to give context because context determines meaning. So the context of TTCI is a tool that will help anybody to save money. In the book, when the reader is finished, if they remember nothing else, they would have remembered that Bruce Scott says, you must learn to save money. Saving money is the fuel. Saving money is the blood that runs through your financial vein. Saving money is the seed that the farmer cannot afford to sow. No savings, no financial freedom. And so, if you don't have the savings, you cannot attack your debts and so on. So TTCI is a methodology to help you to generate savings. And the T is to track your expenses. Where has my money been going? Many people would be shocked to see how much money they're spending on dog food for Brutus. Nothing is wrong with the dogs, by the way. So when you track your money, where is my money going? Then the next T is to trim low-hanging fruits. Don't need subscriptions. I don't really, simple, quick wins. But Here is where the book pivots. The C, marries your dominant money personality or your behavioral tendencies with the C. Why? Because the C is chop. So when I trim and I'm still not able to save enough to hit my obsessive goals, I must move from trim to chop. I remove the little clipper and I come up with the chopper. This is where I challenge the reader. You live in a 5,000 square foot house that's costing you between utilities and so on, whatever $1,000 a month. You will be tested. Maybe it's time to go live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Right. Or maybe it's time to go live with your mother-in-law that you love so much for a season.
Right.
For a season. And that's what CHOP is. The CHOP is the radical moves. I want to send my kid to a private school. He may have to, or she may have to go to a community college where you pay a fraction of the cost. But we also recognize that when you trim and you chop, you may not necessarily save enough because of cost of living and you are already living skin and bones. And the I is to increase income. And I credit and I leverage the cash flow quadrant by Kiyosaki, and I use my own spin on it. And I argue that there are 4 ways to earn money. And I challenge the reader. I give lots of tips. And one of my fundamental arguments is leverage your hobbies and your passions. And that's a source from which you can make money. And when you marry the trim, the chop, and the increased income, you will be in a position to save, especially if you have that bulldog-like obsession. You will find the legal means to get the savings in your hand, because if you don't have the savings, you cannot build the emergency fund, and you're stuck on the road to financial freedom. I apologize for the passion, but it's
no apologies, man. No, but Bruce, let me ask you this, Bruce, because what you're describing sounds so great, but oh my goodness, that sounds so hard to do. And we have so many people out here that will give you reasons, give you, I'll say excuses itself to say, but Bruce, how is this going to work for me? Why is this going to work for me? And I think that's, what's your response to that? Because that's going to be common.
So, George, Shawn, it takes us back to your why. And the why is why the obsession. All right. So my mother, and I didn't want to exhaust you guys, another one of my obsessive desires was my mother. When I see what my mother went through, basically a single mom, and she's very much prominent in the dedication and the acknowledgement, right? I also realized that I needed to help my mother. My mother had me when she was 18 years old. She could have gone through other options. So everybody needs to find their why. And when your why makes you cry, you will not make any excuses for attacking those goals.
So we haven't dug deep enough is what you're telling me. Dig deeper. Yes. Keep asking the questions. Keep understanding the why. What is your aha moment kind of thing that's going to turn your life around itself? Because if not, we can excuse our way out of anything.
Excuses are cleverly invented lies.
There you go.
No offense to anyone.
I can't write all these things down fast enough. They're so great. What did you say?
That's the passion. That's the speed of the passion itself.
Excuses.
Let me ask you this one thing. I saw one of your postings, your media postings itself. Bruce Scott, a Christian who is an accountant. Yeah. What's that label about?
All right. So that was an interview that I did like about 7-8 years ago with a local press. I am from a Christian worldview, but I'm not the kind of guy that will kind of slap you with my Bible over the back of your head. All I was trying to do in that article was to explain that it is reasonable to believe the claims of Christianity. And I argue from a position of my experience, the journey that I took to do the study on whether there was a historical Jesus, the authority of Scripture, and having gotten reasonable evidence, not perfect evidence, I apply those principles in my life, and I think they've made me a better father, a better husband, a better friend. Notice, I have not yet talked about time and eternity and hell or heaven. That's chapter 2. And it's really me just saying to the world, look, I have embraced the Christian worldview, and this is the person that you have today. He's the head of a biggest accounting firm in Jamaica. He does a lot of free speeches, and I attribute a lot of the values from that Christian faith to that. And if somebody likes that, then they can go join me in that Christian party. If they choose another path, that's their choice, and no judgments. So that's the context of that article.
Gotcha. Love it.
Yeah. So I want to go over real quick some of the other big highlights in the book here, saving up for a rainy day fund, reducing debt, understanding the rules of investing. I mean, all those things plus all the things we've talked about, those are the 14 steps to financial freedom. I know we've got a little bit of a time crunch here. I kind of wish.
You're good, buddy.
I was going to say, I kind of wish we didn't, because we could probably go another 20, 30 minutes.
Keep on going. Don't worry.
What I really want to get to, so part of what, I take a selfish point of view in interviewing you is because I haven't gotten to that part in the book yet, is the how to go about it. And that's one of the things that a lot of my clients struggle with. George mentioned being an ostrich and just burying your head in the sand, or the clients that come into my office and say, if this thing hits, then I'll have a bunch of money. When this client pays me, I'll have a bunch of money. When this business thing pays off, I'll have a bunch of money. So how do you stay, and I think I know what your answer is going to be, but how do you stay disciplined to say, I need to break out of that mindset. I need to start attacking my debt. Somebody that is listening to this show that says, this is all great, but I don't know that I can be that passionate. I don't know where to start. I'm in too deep in debt. Where do they start? What's the first thing they should do?
Excellent question. And I'm going to give you not my why makes you cry answer. That's my foundation. I'm going to give you a structure that sits on top of that, right? What I have discovered in my one-on-one sessions with individuals, guys, a lot of the times, persons obviously know that they're struggling financially, but they don't necessarily know the exact picture and the real state that they're in, which is why the diagnosis is important. You put that 10 steps on a piece of paper, and that the reds are what I'm calling danger, where you fall below the benchmarks. That thing has power. When you look at that, it's like the doctor showing you your x-ray and seeing some really crazy things going on. That has power in and of itself. But the second thing that I find empowers people and give them a sense of, I need to do something about it. A lot of persons simply do not have a clue as to how to start to fix the problem. And when I outline the GPS methodology, which, by the way, 9 steps under grow, 3 under protect, and 2 under sow, that's how you get to 14. So when they and by the way, 14 happens to be the number of completion. So if you complete the 14 steps, then you should get to your financial freedom journey. So the quick point I'm making, I say GPS your money, grow, protect, sow your money, 9, 3, 2. And I outline the steps. And all of a sudden, guys, they are still in their rut, but now they have hope. They have a path. It's like the doctor saying to you, oh, for 6 years, you've been wondering why you're feeling this pain. Nobody could diagnose me. And finally, somebody diagnoses you and said, this is the treatment. You haven't got the treatment yet. But now there is hope. In the first part of the book, introduction, when I set the stage as to the audience, I said, this book is meant to be a source of wisdom and hope. Depression is feeling a sense of helplessness that leads to a sense of hopelessness. And when you see that little light, even though you haven't seen a big, full, emblazoned sun, you get energy, man. I've seen that in my sessions many times. A little wisdom, a little path. I can't imagine I'm going to get out. Plus my why that makes me cry. Oh my God, it's time and space, man. A couple of years, you're skipping down the streets of financial freedom.
Gosh, so for the people watching, for the people listening, you don't see that I've literally got an ear-to-ear grin. And I think Bruce wins the award for the most passionate guest we've ever had.
I would agree with that.
Ever.
I have an award. I'll give it to you just, virtually itself, because I agree. And that's the thing. As part of this journey itself, we always look at money as that, like, it's just something we do. It's something we make. It's not, but it's so easy to get into these holes. Emotionally, it drags us down into this darkness, into these areas itself.
Yes.
It's that type of passion that Bruce is talking about that's going to make you want to change. Why do you want to change? Like, for me, it's like, well, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. No big deal. I'll just make money and I'll worry about life when it needs to worry. But I think, Bruce, you can agree, we're in that one medical emergency, any type of emergency that we're broke and we're in a financial crisis, whatever that might be for that person. And I think that's where we don't want you to get to that point. We want you to recognize there is a better way to do this. And we've always been taught, right? Let's buy something, feel good, YOLO, no worry about life. Everything's great. And we want to say there's a different way to live that life and still have that financial freedom that will give us even more happy. I don't think people realize we're more happy when we have that stability, not constrained or locked down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, again, 14 steps to financialfreedom.com. You can connect with Bruce on Facebook and LinkedIn, both under Bruce Scott. Bruce, anything we didn't talk about? Anything you want to add in?
Yeah, what I want to add in is that regardless of your age, because the subtitle to the book is Simple Strategies to Grow, Protect, Sow. Easy to remember. GPS, Grow, Protect, Sow, your money at any age. So for those persons, you are 20 or you are 70, there is a message in this book. The older you get, the more aggressive you will need to be with all of the principles. And I have a special section in the book for the 20s and the 30s and even the teenagers. And I'm arguing very passionately. So this is my little last point. If you are in your 20s or your 30s, and you follow the simple advice of setting aside money in an ETF or an index fund or mutual fund, automatically $100 a year at 12% on the high end for the next 40 years, you won't need to worry about money when you reach 50s, 60s. You won't. And so start early. Let the power and the engine and the magic of compound interest propel you to financial freedom. If you're later in your years, the book talks about doing your budget before you actually retire and some radical steps that you need to take to get into a better position. So the older you are, the harder it is. The younger you are, the easier it is. But young people, you need to avoid cultural influences that will suck the money out of your pocket. And I talk about that in the book as well.
Well, and for older people, don't get intimidated by it. There is a path to get to financial freedom. Like you said, you just might have to work a little harder to get there.
Only difference.
So...
Well, I'm going to work a lot then if that's the case, because apparently I'm very old. So we'll.
Dude, I'm older than you, man.
Yeah.
So, hey, it's all good, man. We got plenty of years in the tank left, so we can keep investing and keep giving back to the communities, because that's for me. A part of this journey is not just making money and doing things for ourselves, but I think it's how we can use that money itself to give back to the communities. So I think that's. Again, there's so much involved. And again, I know, Bruce, we could probably go on forever on this thing, because it seems like I'm on Bruce's gravy train already. We're good. Like whatever Bruce is selling, I'm buying. So let's get him get people buying his book so they can get that energy and do that stuff as well.
There you go. Again, 14 steps to financialfreedom.com. Really easy. 14, number 14, not spelled out. Number 14, steps to financialfreedom.com. Before we wrap up really quick, I do want to give a shout out to our editor, Mark Purvis. Mark has a website called legacyspotlight.com. So when you get to financial freedom and you want to capture those stories and tell future generations about how you got there and what traps to avoid, contact Mark at legacyspotlight.com. He'll come out, he'll video it, he'll get you the teleprompter, he'll get you the editing, he'll get you the whole 9 yards. So thank you, Mark, for being our longtime friend, our longtime editor. Also, check us out. Check out the Crushing Debt Podcast on patreon.com. We don't have Patreon set up so that we can make money. We have Patreon set up so that we can reroute that money back into the show to make it better for you as our listener. Check out all the social media channels. In addition to checking out Bruce Scott, you can find the Yesner Law Facebook page, the Curbelo Financial TikTok. I think we're both on Instagram or YouTube.
Yes, indeed.
All that kind of stuff. So... Phew.
Bruce, you exhausted the two old men on the show. I love it.
I'm tired now. Wow.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun, guys.
It was a lot of fun, and I really, really do appreciate you being on the show. And Book Launchers, again, nice job, great guest. All the success. Thank you for writing the book. I do recommend it. I'm not all the way through it yet, but I do recommend it. What I have read so far, I love what I've read so far. Other than that, anything else, or are we ready to wrap up, George?
I would say it's a pleasure. I would say read this guy's book. We're going to have to put this on Instagram as well to say, get this guy some attention and get some of the books itself. dude, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to bringing this guy back. We have to have another reason where to bring this guy back. That's for sure.
Definitely have him back. Definitely. So
thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and you're doing a great work. Your energy is amazing, and I wish you good and greater success.
I love it.
Thank you. So we're going to end on that, except I think both the book and the podcast both stand for, we want you to have more money at the end of the month, not more months at the end of the money. So that'll do it for this week's episode, and we look forward to talking to you on next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Shawn or connect with us on social media. Shawn Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.